Hi, my name's Aisling Clardy. I'm a researcher at the UNESCO Chair at IT Tralee, and I'd like to take a few minutes to share with you about the Inclusive Times model. This model is an adaptation model designed for physical education teachers, sports coaches, and any professional or volunteer that operates or leads activities related to physical activity, active recreation, or fitness. The model is a memory tool that guides practitioners to consider the various aspects of an activity where there may be adaptations or certain considerations, especially when including participants with disabilities. In the Inclusive Times model, TIMES is an acronym for time, instruction, movement, environment, and support. So let's look at time and some examples of time-related considerations for inclusion. Training at a certain time of day may be important for some participants. For example, a person who experiences fatigue at certain times of the day, or they could experience side effects from medication. Some people may have what's often referred to as night blindness, meaning that their visual impairment is more prominent in the dark. Some participants may need more time to perform and learn new tasks. The length of an activity or the frequency of practice and breaks is another consideration. Say for some participants who fatigue easily, they may need to pause every now and again and then to re-energize. If a participant requires support from a family member or support staff, for example with changing or transport or any other reason, the timing of a session may need to revolve around these people's schedules also. I is for instruction. Instruction relates to purposeful communication to guide and facilitate the learning process. Some considerations related to instruction are a person-centered and functioning approach really supports the human rights approach and the biopsychosocial model of disability and health. Building rapport and a trusting relationship with participants will enable you to work with them. Remember that you don't have to figure it all out yourself. Work with your participants. Take time to learn what the participant can and can't do while focusing on what they can do. Where possible, one-on-one training or smaller groups are ideal, especially in the beginning. Do your best to communicate according to each person's individual needs. For example, people with visual impairments are supported by plenty of verbal cues and manual guidance. Of course, permission is always required before touching any participant. People with hearing impairments require visual demonstrations and visual cues, maybe even printed images. Also, if they use sign language to communicate, you could always learn a few words and to help them feel more included. People with cognitive difficulties or intellectual impairments, and also sometimes people with autism, can also be supported by these printed visual cue cards with minimal and very simple instruction. Always do your best to be respectful and avoid patronizing people with disabilities. And as with all communication, ensure the participants have understood any instructions. Watch as they practice what you've instructed and correct accordingly. If there are rules and competitive structure, these can also be adapted to be challenging, and while also at the same time, success is still attainable. For example, rules may be simplified or changed and then reintroduced as skill levels increase. You may allow for more bounces, multiple hits. You could increase or decrease the number of players, the regularity of substitute players. You could reduce or extend the time to perform actions. You could allow different point scoring systems, varying passing styles. For example, an overarm throw could be replaced by bouncing, rolling, or an underarm toss. And in general, you could consider reducing competitive elements where possible. M is for movement. Movement considers the various skills and anatomical and neurological techniques that can be used by participants to complete tasks depending on their functional abilities and difficulties and biomechanics. Again, remember that the design of a program should be according to what a participant can do and work with them to find creative solutions and adaptations. It's helpful also to consider the functional movement tasks and any related movement skills. For example, a participant who uses a wheelchair may roll instead of run. An athlete with a leg amputation may extend an arm sidewards during a long jump to correct asymmetry. A swimmer with limited shoulder mobility, swimming the front or the back crawl, could exaggerate a body roll for efficient arm action for propulsion. Be open to continually exploring different techniques and strategies. Some may be a great success and others maybe not. This is all part of the journey towards inclusive practice. E is for environment, and it relates to the space and the equipment. For inclusion, the space needs to be welcoming and participants need to have physical access. The environment also includes the terrain, noise and distractions, lighting, temperature, hydration, rest areas, and privacy and dignity when changing. Participants may use assistive technology for mobility, communication, or hearing, and you may need to familiarize yourself with this technology. If you're using equipment within a session, it may need to be adapted, or if your budget allows, you may be able to purchase accessible or adapted equipment, including gloves and strapping and bands for grip, or sports-specific equipment. Using balls and bats of varying size, texture, and color, maybe even some bell balls or beakers for participants with visual impairments. You may realize that there may even be local or national grants available to support you financially. S is for support. This considers the broader picture, or the contextual factors in a participant's life, and the impact of their disability or impairment in their participation. For example, these factors include social circumstances, available supports and resources, the participant's personality and behavior, and any other personal factors. Support is important within the person-centered approach and to help build the participant's self-efficacy in relation to physical activity. The key is that, as we've mentioned, is to emphasize ability and achievement rather than disability, while acknowledging and addressing any challenges that may arise. So here are some tips and guidelines to get you thinking creatively on how to include participants with disabilities in your practice. By no means is this an exhaustive list. This list can be as long as your creativity and imagination. These are purely here to serve you, to get you thinking about the different considerations and aspects of an activity. And it's up to you and your participants to work together to find out what works best in your practice to serve and support your participants. We wish you every success on your journey towards inclusive practice.